This
beneficial.
conference will now be recorded.
You're going to have to check everything that comes out and feed it the right information. And the feeding takes about as much time as writing it yourself. The only difference is that the output, if you do it well, the output will be better language and better written. But you're
And
going to
it's
have to
scale.
put in all the details that you would otherwise put in yourself, because otherwise the output is going to be nonsense. That's the whole
That's right.
point.
That's right. It's a garbage in, garbage out, as with any tool.
Exactly.
All right, guys. Let's get going. I started the recording. So objective for today, I sent agenda is to first recap on the decision we made last call to use Rolf's tool to as an anchor point. And second is to talk about your inputs toward improvements of the tool, and go through them, discuss them, and start prioritizing them, and see where we stand. This is an important one, right? Because we want to. Okay, let's get going with that. Let me share screen.
If you like, I can put it on screen.
I have the notes. I put them in the notes.
Okay.
Yeah, I have them in the notes. But we might want to eventually. Hold on, give me. So this one is. Oh, great. How come I signed out? I didn't sign out. Sign in. Just 1 second. I'm sorry. Just 1 minute. I'll remember that password. That's good. All right. All right. So this is my kind of raw notes for the call. Okay, so for today, recap on the TCO tool decision, collect inputs for future enhancements. So last time, just to recap, our decision criteria was for the tool, for the anchor tool, was that, okay, it should be a best TCO contribution to date and ability and commitment to make changes in a timely manner. And it was no-brainer. It was the only tool. It was in decent shape. There is some set of improvements that we want to make. And Rolf, correct me if I'm wrong, you are able and willing to make improvements. So the decision was made to use your tool as an anchor point, meaning it's not a final tool, it's an anchor tool. And now, from now on, anything and everything that we want in this work stream, anything and everything we want to add to our TCO tool will go into the list of potential improvements. We will maintain the list, we'll put priority on the list, and we will jointly decide scope. We call it ZBB line, zero budget line, kind of, what's above the ZBB line will get into the ref 1 of the tool, and what's below ZBB line will go into the next version. It's not really ZBB, I'm sorry, I'm using Intel jargon, but it's more about like, okay, what we believe should be in the first release, what absolutely must be there, we'll make sure we'll focus first. And then if we can have extra time to go ahead and put additional improvements, we'll put additional improvements. Everything else will go to the next revision.
Fantastic.
Any comments, questions on that?
Oh, I love it.
All right.
The only comments I have is that in the next 1.5 months, I will be struggling for time, but I think the first couple of sessions we can focus on the functionality and the functionality additions mostly, and potentially approaches on resolving these additions in the model as is. So I think it will be good for at least the group of core people who are participating in every call, that we all understand this model as good as possible, and I can help with the educational side of that, and then we can collectively determine what the best route is to implement certain additions or changes or recalculations for whatever might be necessary.
Fantastic, fantastic. Very good. Thanks, Rolf. So what I have right now, I basically, so this, I pre-populated Intel input. I'll talk about it in a second, but in terms of capturing the input, I think I'll capture it in the raw notes, and then we will transfer it into your Excel spreadsheet, Rolf. So why don't we do this? Since you own the tool, why don't you own the list since you
Yep.
already have it inside the tool, so it's going to be easier, handy, just
Yep.
will be the master list. Yeah.
I'm just noticing that the list that you have on screen in the modeling tool is not the same that I have in the modeling tool on the Google Drive.
So on the Google Drive, I picked. So let's talk about it. I think
because I was assuming that we're working on the same document. That's basically what it comes down to.
Okay. So all right. So you have the latest. Okay. I basically pulled in version 3.02 at some point, a few weeks ago, and it had these line items that I'm highlighting that you added. Okay.
Yeah.
If you had more updated version, that's great. Your version will be the master.
That is 3.02 is the version that is on the Google Drive, but I see that you've also renamed this file, so this content is not on the Google Drive.
Yeah. I should. Do you want me to open for edit on a Google Drive or as a?
Yeah, you should. Probably.
As Excel?
Well, maybe not if you're working with the browser version.
Yeah, no. I'm this Google thing. I've just it makes me nervous. Why don't you keep the? Why don't you drive the main version?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you just quickly copy paste that little list onto an email, and I'll put it in straight immediately while we're going through.
You mean this one? This one?
No, the bottom one.
Oh, the bottom one. Okay. Yeah, it's here. I already pasted it here in here, and I'll send it to you. Do you want me to send it to you right away?
If that's possible, then I
wanted to discuss it first before we. This is kind of raw input. I wanted to. You'll get that.
No, but that's great, right? That's great. Raw input is good. That's what we need from everyone. Raw input, and we can so that we can evaluate and process accordingly.
Right. So since we're already talking about it, let me quickly go over Intel input, and then we will open the floor to the rest. Right. So the Intel input, what I did basically, I had an internal meeting within my, I just called internal meeting with our internal folks to discuss the tool, to discuss the scope, explained everything. And this is kind of raw input coming from Intel. We are not done yet. We ran out of time. We will have another session to go through the rest of the input and whatnot. In fact, Rolf, if you're open to have a discussion with Intel folks for some Q&A and just as like a small forum, they really the small forum works better, faster. Okay, I'll do that. So let me go over this. So first of all, people say, immersion cooling is great, but when the cold plate, absolutely. Answer is yes, and I explained them. It's not.
Yeah, quick remark on that one. It is simpler to do with immersion simply because all the energy that is immersed will refer to heat, and you only need to include a certain loss factor to the environment. But with cold plates, there is more variation and more detailing needed to make that accurate because you're only taking a partial amount of the heat that is generated by the system, and to make that an effective calculation, you're going to need to distinguish between the heat captured by the cold plates versus the rest of the heat coming out of the system. And that is less straightforward than with immersion. So it's something that requires a fairly significant amount of additional detailing and knowledge of the cold plate type infrastructure that you would be considering.
That's correct. That's correct. So, and we also stated in the beginning of this project that first version of the tool will just do straight air versus immersion, and
Yeah,
cold plate is a subject for Ref 2 or something.
I can see a way forward for this, but it would require going into an additional. I could probably generate an additional calculation sheet with specific variables for cold plates.
Yep.
And then point the model to either cold plate or immersion calculation, or maybe even for certain percentages of a facility.
So,
But yeah, but it, like I said,
but,
that is a pretty big one to work in because of the different functions that would be needed for cold plate.
I agree 100%, but let's not solve it now on the fly. I understand, but let's think about it. Let's have a discussion maybe with Intel folks and other folks who may have input on how to approach the cold plate. Right now, if you guys agree, I'm basically color coding it as I don't know. Let me make it anything that is not in the so I would just say Ref 2 to it, and meaning that it's not in the initial revision, not in Ref 1 of the TCO tool that we're going to reduce. As a subject for Ref 2. Another input is basically the point was made that with liquid or immersion, cold plate or immersion cooling, it's likely that TJ of the
The T junction
the
temperature.
T
Yeah.
junction of the components will be lower than with air, meaning that leakage will be less, meaning that more of the power will be available for the active calculations and whatnot, and resulting in potential performance upside. So the desire, not a request, but desire is to address how can we capture that in the calculation. I personally.
It's a good question,
Mm-hmm.
but I
Mm-hmm.
don't think it relates directly to TCO calculations. Currently,
Yes.
we've decided to focus on
Yes.
on allowing a comparison between apples, and part of that comparing apples with apples is that we are simplifying performance indication and expressing performance in kilowattage instead of anything else. Again, this is something that if we decide to move away from that premise, it's going to be a hell of a lot more difficult to utilize the current model as is, simply because the model doesn't take the actual IT performance into account beyond utilization of
Yep.
power per rack or per square meter. So I don't think the current model will accommodate that, but it's definitely something of interest to look at in a later stage to see if we can come up with a creative value
I
add
hear
for
it. I hear it. Maybe what we need to do really is to possibly in the white paper we can just say that, hey, while we calculate the TCO, take a look into your stuff and
It's
see
part of the disclaimers. It's part of the disclaimers, absolutely.
in we encourage you not just look at the TCO, but also look at the potential performance upside because of this. So we can possibly explain the mechanism, how it happens, and encourage people to look into additional data that is not part of the TCO. Is one of those kind of positive side effects of it. All right. All right. A question. There was a question why PSU loss is not part of IT power, and Intel saying we believe it will be there in all cases.
No, it is. It is in the calculation. But we are comparing the apples here are defined as the digital the components behind the power supply.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're also affecting that part of the power envelope by removing the fans, and therefore the loss is a percentage of the electronics consumption It is in the IT power figures, but it's not in the apple. The apple that we're trying to compare calculates the IT power consumption after the power supply, behind the power supply, because that's where we're reducing, and then we apply the same percentage of power loss on the power supply based on the new power figure that is behind the power supply, and we put it back into the IT power. So the premise in the question is incorrect. It's the PSU loss is not part of the apple, but it is part of the IT power.
One second. Yeah, so that's exactly the explanation I gave to my team after just looking into it and seeing the mechanics. When first you remove it and then you add it, but then when you add it, it's a little bit less because of the fence. Fence I remove it. That makes perfect sense. It was just a confusion, so I'm addressing. So effectively, exactly. Probably no action is required on this one. It's just an explanation. Okay. Yeah, there was another suggestion. It was kind of a little bit outside of my expertise. I need to learn it a little bit more. But suggestion to make model more explicit. Suggest making model use explicit definition of the PUE, because people say PUE can be defined at something called L1, L2, or L3 levels. So which one are we using and which one are we guiding folks to use?
I think the only thing that we can do is use it on the facility-wide level. I'm not sure whether that's L1, level 1, 2, or 3. But that's because the calculation works the entire facility footprint into the KPIs. Because of the variation in deployment types, I think it's more straightforward to use the facility-wide PUE figure instead of a room level or a rack level. I think that's what the different levels stand for. If somebody else can explain further or has a different view, please speak up.
My simple understanding from very quick explanation by Mohan, my boss, is that it's basically L1 is like the whole facility, L2 is like after the
yeah, then it's that is level 1.
Yeah. So okay. So let's have a full explanation what it is L1, L2, L3. Maybe and then saying, we want L1, which means this, right?
Well, the tool calculates a facility, so therefore it applies to the whole facility. So I don't think there can be any other
you're an
level
expert
applied to the model, right? So
you are the expert. The tool will not be used just by experts. So people who deal with that want to clarification. So I'm basically, if you're okay with that, I will put a request to you action item to explain the definition, explain the level / scope of PUE used in a tool.
Might I suggest that you actually cite the deep link in the ISO spec of just level 1 and make it very clear we are only calculating based on this PUE, level 1 found here in ISO. Don't try to explain it. Don't try to enter the debate of, it's just a distraction. There's all sorts of people who like to gerrymander that metric, and it's not valuable.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. So I'll state it in the KPIs. I can make that revision right now. And I will make that revision right now. PUE between brackets L1.
No Diet Coke, just classic Coke.
All right. So you will just clarify which PUE is used and what's included. So, all right.
Done.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. This is another one was concern that some people saw that sometimes people cheat and measure PUE on the best day in a year. So, and the quote basically suggests to use use PUE reported over statistically significant time window, including climate fluctuations.
Yeah, really, this is the TCO tool, and the only person that anyone is going to fool with that approach is themselves. So this is
Right.
designed. If you're gonna put garbage in, you're gonna get garbage out, right? So it goes into the same as what we started the call with. This is a tool to help you as an end user to calculate your facility. If you decide to use marketing figures and false information, don't expect the model to perform to a real life scenario.
It may be along the lines of like don't put electric fan in the bathtub, right? So type of thing. So maybe just an explanation, maybe some kind of education, basically saying if somebody is using PUE, somebody quoting PUE, make sure you get the data that is statistically significant. Maybe we'll just put a.
I would suggest it's whatever duration is the TCO model. So if the TCO has a lifetime of 5 years for the system deployment, then the PUE needs to be at 5 years too. You can't say PUE of this day. Again, gerrymandering, we can't address it. Just say, look, the PUE estimate should be in conjunction with whatever the duration of the TCO is.
I can also try and have a look at the design power to see if we can. No, because that will screw up the rest of the calculation. No, yeah. I could consider doing a design power figure, then applying the PUE over that.
Don't overcomplicate things. We'll just
at least, probably I think that it should be a year average PUE. So you cover 1 year with all the
PUE by definition should be measured over a full year, right? So
yeah, but not should be, yeah.
Yeah, I would say just put a disclaimer saying, hey, please be aware that in order to do a proper thing, you need to have a PUE over significantly, statistical significant time window, maybe a year, and here's some additional data points and so on. As just as suggestions to the user. I mean, of course, then it's up to the user, garbage in, garbage out, but you've been warned, right? I wouldn't, Rolf, I wouldn't change the tool for that. It just, it's just a warning for people.
No, but I am thinking now. It puts me on a track to think of a way to make the base figures for the case a little bit more accurate. But I've made some notes for myself there in the model.
All right. So next one is the thermal. Let's see. There was a comment stating that thermal cooling factor is not a standard practice, and people use something called COP, coefficient of performance. Is there a way to, and the recommendation is to use coefficient of performance instead of thermal cooling factor?
Sure. The factor is something I defined years ago as just something that would help me in doing these calculations. But yeah, we can name it whatever it is. I'll have to look in the coefficient of performance whether that is calculated differently or not. Is there somebody who can help me with that?
Here's a link that I was suggested to, and you were suggested to look into it. So
yeah, please send that over. Yeah,
it's right there in the minutes in the notes that I'm sharing right now over the screen. So it's right there. Okay, Rolf to address.
Yeah, if that's
Agreed.
useful,
Okay.
that's definitely an improvement.
Yep. Okay. A question: do we properly address design power for CapEx versus
No,
average power for OpEx?
we don't properly address that, and that's what I was referring to with the notes I was just taking. So it's definitely something to look at, but I'm gonna need some help with doing that. I think.
I can help, and Mark Myers from Intel can help, because we have some data on like, obviously you do, for design, you size the thing for design power and then boilerplate number, and then effectively for
Yep.
OpEx there is some derating for CPU, different derating for memory, different derating for GPUs, and so on.
Yeah, but this is for the facility. We're excluding the IT cost and values in here. But yes, currently there is a couple of shortcuts in this model, which I've touched upon in the presentation of this tooling. So it's not perfect, but yes, we can make it a lot better. But we're gonna need to be sure. I think it would be good to dedicate at some point when we reach this point to dedicate about half an hour for it in one of these calls. With that we just go at it with the Excel on the screen and go through what is exactly
Yeah.
calculated now and how we can make that better.
Yeah, I recommend Mark from Intel. He can really be helpful. We just need to find him. He's a little bit busy guy.
Let's make sure he gets to the call. Gets into this call when we come to these points. I
Yes,
think it would be
sounds
really good to
plus.
address some of these because this is really getting into the weeds of this model, and that would be great to do in this setting as well.
Yeah. But in terms of OpEx, it's real, because OpEx in many cases, the rating could be as big as 50%.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's
So let's see. Another one is the last but not least. It's let's see. List of data and variables affected by climate. Ensure we capture at least 3 climate data points, 2 extremes and 1 average. We spoke about it in the it's already in your list of suggested improvements, but it's just been re-emphasized again by Intel that it's important to address. And perhaps pull out have your variables for all kinds of things, and maybe just have a tab with a climate tab or something, and
yeah,
say,
I love that. I really love that. I really like it. I'm gonna need some guidance on appropriate. Are there industry references and boundaries that qualify for different types of climates, with some ranges that we can adopt instead of making them up as we go?
yeah.
Because even in hot
Team.
climates, a dry desert environment is again completely different compared to an equally hot rainforest environment, right? So I don't know what appropriate boundaries would be, and again, I will likely need some help with the extent to which these climate aspects will affect certain cooling ratios, cooling performance data, or other aspects to maintenance costs of a facility, because we're going to have to start becoming creative with that as well.
So what I'm thinking is, let's have a climate tab. In that tab, for a non-expert user, we'll say dry dry climate, wet climate, 2 extremes, right? Dry cold, and maybe wet hot, and then something in between. And then that will be kind of pre-populated with whatever variables. Let's say there are like 5 variables. I'm just making it up. There are like 5 variables that are affecting the climate, the climate related. Let's get those 5 variables from experts. Rich, I see you raising hand with helping us. And let's say those 5 variables that
I'm
affect
curious to
climate.
Rich's input now.
Well, I mean, the green
But he's
data
taking his
is
hand up.
having like a fantastic thing about the climate, so I'm hoping that Rich knows which variables are affecting so he can help us.
Rich?
Everybody calls me the tree hugger because I'm from Seattle. I'm used to it. So,
Great.
yes, I will raise my hand and help try to map it. I'll tell you, it's not a good mapping. It's not clear, but I'll try. It's worth a try.
Well, you know, we'll right now we have nothing, so we will take any help you can give us on this, and we'll improve from there.
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks so much. All right, so we'll do that. Let me just capture Rich to suggest, not just Rich, but by the way, Rich and others suggest climate variables and two extremes and one typical, and values for two extremes and one or average data point for pre-population. And then people who know better, they can either just fill it by themselves or start with the pre-populated version and modify as needed. Does it work? I think
it will be good to make sure that we get some highlights on which specific aspects of climate will be most influential on a TCO model. Obviously, that's temperature, but humidity as well. But I can also imagine smog or
salt,
other
salt
less
in the air, yeah, salinity.
Salt, yeah, that's that sort of stuff. Things that people may not think of very quickly, but which may incur a different multiplier for maintenance costs. That will affect TCO because the maintenance is all determined with multipliers, and I can imagine we create some kind of a factor for on the multipliers for maintenance per kilowatt.
Okay. What I suggest as we go over the first version, let's think 80-20. Let's apply 80-20 rule. Let's do 80% of work in 20% of time. Because the timing is of essence, let's do the first version, something solid, something that we can go loud and proud about, and then use the momentum to go ahead and refine it even to make it even better. So if you see, if you can cover, 80% of it with 20% of effort, let's focus on that. If you see certain variables or certain complexities, let's call them out and see if we really need to add them to the first revision. Is it going to affect the result materially? So that it's more like sensitivity. Let's address the items that affect TCO the most. Okay, if we are, it's like this is how Mark and I work. We look at the we look at the TCO calculation, and we at some point we'll see, oh my God, this is going to affect TCO by 10% or 15%. Of course, we're going to add it. But if it's something that we can have to do PhD on it, but at the end it moves the needle within 1%, I don't care. I'm not gonna even.
No, the more I think of it now, I think it makes sense to identify the elements that make up a climate. Just create some variables for average, min, and max temperatures and humidity, that sort of stuff. We may be able to work in a curve of some kind to calculate multipliers for maintenance, but also do a more accurate assessment on recommended cooling infrastructure, for example. So I think we can work with something on this without just going with a blanket statement. Hey, this is a very hot climate, because I don't think that will be meaningful, because you really have to look at the details behind a specific climate environment instead of just the climate
I
denotation.
agree. So could you add smoke, salinity,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and smoke, salinity, saline, salt in the air, and dust. Dust is the top 5 that kill the
yeah, pollution, smog, dust.
pollution, smog, dust, whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. Those kind of figures matter. I can also imagine that we may need to work in some kind of a cost deduction or increase for environments where you are dealing with very low cost workers or staff for doing specific maintenance versus high, but maybe that goes too far in the weeds. But
Yeah, and I prefer it
yeah.
says deployment climate, not climate in the aggregate for the world. It's too abstract. When people go, oh, the deployment climate of that deployment at that location given this liquid cooling system, that makes it more clear. Oh, so I'll give you a bias that happens. A lot of people assume we have nice potable water everywhere in the United States. That does not exist if we're deploying in Africa, for example, or the Middle East. That does not exist. So we can't make that assumption. So it's important we kind of get out of our own US-centric design bias when we do this.
No, I agree.
And I'll
I
try
agree
to
on that.
expose that.
Do we want to keep it all as part of the climate thing, or should it be in terms of actionable?
As a topic, I think yes, because if it determines if we're taking the climate approach by using specific figures instead of just a rough climate denotation, then we can factor in all these other specific environmental, maybe just call it environmental.
Even better.
Environmental
then you get,
aspects.
You could talk about seismic racks for earthquake and stuff like that. So seismic bracing for tanks and tubs is different than regular deployments.
All right.
And we can just add multipliers for those kind of things without getting into the weeds of costing every little measure for we need to include a seismic element. Let's find a quote, but just because we have to stay on the rough when it comes to this calculation. So determining appropriate multipliers for the cost is probably the easiest and the most straightforward approach to this. And these multipliers we can modify with use cases, and we can also always refine further for more specific elements, for more specific details.
Why don't they give you both action item to report us back next time? It's suggested how to handle that, the whole thing.
I prefer others to come up with climate aspects and potential effects on costs, so I can just process it. Because I will not have the time to liaise with individuals outside this call to have all sorts of interviews on what might constitute a good approach. So I would prefer to discuss these items in the call, and that I use takeaways from every call to start processing.
Fair.
So I'll come back with a table that says, hey, for seismic racks, it's a 15% cost uplift. For seismic tanks, it's a 25% cost uplift on the tank.
Yeah,
something like that.
That sort of stuff. That's the type of multipliers that we can easily use and implement. Yeah.
All right. Sounds good. So that's all right now from Intel, and but as I said, I'm going to have additional session. Hopefully, Rolf, with you, if I will have a separate call. We'll capture additional input and we'll bring it to this forum. I'm sorry it took a long time, but are there additional recommendations to the tool from others?
So my point related with, sorry.
No, you go ahead, hon.
Okay, yeah, my point related with the localization of the data center is not only related with climatic issues, topics, but also related with the cost of the energy. So the cost of the energy is really variable in different locations, and the balance between capex and opex can change. I think it can be important. So when we talk about where will it be placed, not only related with environment, climatic, but also with utility costs and so on.
Yeah, so power costs are already a variable. It's one of the core variables on the first page of the model.
Okay.
So electricity cost is, and it also has the option, but that's an option that needs to be further expanded.
It's an input. Okay.
Currently, it contains a staged tax scheme, which is common in Europe. But we may want to look at that in a later stage as well to expand that to include also further other tax schemes that might be more modifiable for a local tax environment. The current one that is in there is based on the Dutch tax scheme. But there are different levels in different countries that apply to energy taxation. It can be a cumbersome subject to to address. But I've done it in the current model. But we can look at including some more local variations in there, or finding ways of implementing more local variations.
Should we, at some point, I mean, not, you know, we need to debate whether it's in the first version. Maybe in the first version of the tool, we'll just rely on the user to say, hey, I live here. This is where I want to build the thing. And here's my cost of energy. People will just dial it in. But maybe for the future, we'll just do some couple of pre-populated things, like a typical US, typical Latin America, typical Europe, you know, and then people will just refine. I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah, well, that's like I said, we're going to start with what we have now, and we'll while we go ahead and start processing the to-do list, we can quickly identify what are the quick ones that we can build in, and what are the ones that are more significant and take more time and more collaboration to work at. We can, but I would prefer to just organize the list in terms of priorities, and
we'll get there. Definitely, we'll get there. Right now, just the raw.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. And then we just start process it top down, see how far we can get.
Yep, that's right.
And anything that's going to be too complicated or too disruptive in this model, we can just park for a later point.
Okay. Anything else, Danny?
No, for the moment.
All right.
Hey,
Fireflies AI, do you have any comments?
Yeah. Hey, I do. I've got a comment. And maybe I don't know what we do, take a vote on this, but I know Eddie is going to be on vacation for our next call, and he had asked for me to take the horns on it. But I don't mind. But I think we're in the weeds right now here on this in a good way, and I think I don't want to handle the next call without you. I'm just saying this is like too intense.
I'll be able to fill in with you, Alison, because the next call is going to be about changes to the model and considering the changes and priorities. So since I'm the one who's going to be processing it, I'll be happy to be on your side.
Thanks so much
to help manage through it. As long as you can make sure that all the stuff around the call and getting stuff organized in advance, stuff that may need to be organized, that may or may not need to be organized in advance, that you take that burden, then I'm happy to be the active one in the call to go through the list.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Alison completely understood. No worries. And looks like we have Rolf is going to help. So, all right. Alison, in terms of the tool itself, capabilities and whatnot, what top of your mind in terms of what else needs to be?
I think I'm really pleased to be going down this route. I can't thank you enough, Rolf, for all your help, honestly. So, of course, you know, we it takes a village, right? So thank you, Danny, for your input, and of course Eddie, big time. So and of course Rich, I know you've been integral with this. So, Fireflies, you've been a little quiet, but just saying. So
Fireflies, please reboot yourself.
Yeah, but
Okay.
since Fireflies is taking notes in this call, I would appreciate if IBG would be able to join these calls and actually contribute in these calls, because we can use his help. And Fireflies is in here on behalf of IBG. At least that's how it's that's how it's presented here on the call. So IBG, if you're reading this, we would value your presence in here instead of just the AI.
who is it again?
IBG, I think it's from Rackspace.
Oh, okay, cool.
We hope it's Rackspace and not the North Koreans.
Darth Vader.
All right. Who else we have here? We have.
Well, and I know GRC was also came in, but they've had some reorganization, and so I don't think Mike Montez will be attending this call any longer. So, but we'd love to have their input as well. But I'll try to rally back with now who's taken the gauntlet from that team. So.
Yeah. Intel is also going through some big changes, so I hope I'm still allowed to go ahead and do this. So we'll see.
Don't say that.
Yeah. So any other?
Sorry,
looks like we have.
It's actually Abhijit Saini from Rack Bank, not Rackspace. So apologies for that.
Okay.
Cool.
All right, guys. Let's see. Arad Azizi.
Yes. Eddie. Yep. I don't have any comments, honestly. Like, it was more of a learning experience for me, and this is something that I'm still learning. So, from my side, like, I'm pretty much like, I plan to use this tool to get some idea. We have our own CapEx, OpEx analysis for different technologies, but I'm just starting. So I don't have a tool at least for it. So, but I plan to use this tool to make sense of a baseline comparison for different types of technologies. So what matters for us at least is to be able to have a clear understanding of the value of each one of these technologies, whether it's immersion, single phase, two phase, or other technologies. So that's the point for me.
Right. If that, I would really encourage you to actually take the tool and maybe start using it and letting Allison, myself, and Rolf know what are you stumbling upon. What are you like, oh, this makes sense, this doesn't make sense, I understand this, I don't understand that. Because having somebody who is not part of the tool, or somebody who kind of drive the development, kind of user, if you will, look at this and learning and asking questions as you go, it would be super valuable for us. You know,
absolutely.
we could use you as a guinea pig.
Right.
Exactly,
yeah, and I'm totally okay with that. So I think that's actually a great plan. The challenge is that though, like I don't have like access to an actual data center, so I have to get some input regarding some metrics. But the ideal case would be actually like running a scenario or sort of a simulation, basically, of an example data center, run the tool on it, and see what we can get out of it and what is
we'll
missing.
We'll get there. But first, if you can just go over the presentation and start maybe poking into the tool and just asking questions. Your questions would be super valuable to us, because those questions would reflect how somebody who is not familiar with this is actually comprehending what's there.
Sounds good. I think that's a great idea. I'll start doing that.
Thanks for supporting it. You know how to get to the tool, right? There is a link to that.
I think you shared. I downloaded the Excel file.
Okay.
But I'll start. I had some. I think I mentioned it
there
before.
There is a PowerPoint in the same folder, right? in the same folder.
I
There is
have
a
a little bit of
PowerPoint.
a problem with the Google Drive since it's blocked in my organization.
Oh.
But personal, like on my personal system, I'll be able, will be trying to like do it.
Well, why don't you shoot me a
If I
note
couldn't,
and
I'll reach.
I'll attach.
Yeah.
Maybe if you shoot me or Rolf a note, we will just attach the tool and presentation and send it back to you.
That would be great. I would greatly appreciate it.
Okay.
I'll send
good.
out an email. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks for your help. This is very, very good.
Thanks, everyone. I hope like I could contribute at least to that part of it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we'll just do AD Rolf send materials.
Hey, I have a quick question for Rolf. Rolf, within the current cost table, is there a line item for extended warranties?
No, there's not, because it's considered part of IT costs, which we have excluded in the model because of the inherent amount of variations that makes it virtually impossible to include that in any model.
Okay, all right. As long as
So
we
we're
say that
focusing on the
somewhere, it's
facility
out of
itself.
scope. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anything else for today? Well, I think it was a productive discussion.
So Eddie, if you want to set up a meet with your team, because I think looking at this list, your team has really studied the model, which is great. And I would value, so I don't want to be engaging with everyone individually outside the call, but I'm happy to engage with your team for a one-off session and go through the model and see if there's more that Intel wants to put in. Happy to do that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I cannot promise, I'm flying out tomorrow and back on 26, but upon my return, I will definitely do that. I hope
so
majority of the input's already here.
So what? It's Mo and team, right? So it's the people that I'm already on engagement on a regular basis,
usual suspects. Another one is a Mark Myers. I don't know if you know Mark. He's super.
Been a while.
Yeah. Huh?
It's been a while though, but yes, I know him.
Yeah. He and I, and basically he drives the tool, internal tool, and he's amazing in what he can do in depth and breadth of knowledge. So, okay.
Just Rolf, let me know when. Rolf, let me know if you've got a few minutes, if you want, between now and the 26th, the call, and I can be available whenever it's convenient for you. I know you're super busy. Okay.
Yeah, I'll let you know. It's I was thinking right now, but no, I shouldn't. I'll get in a fight with my wife at dinner time.
Uh-oh, don't do that. Okay, dear.
All right.
Happy wife, happy life, right? Okay. So.
Oh, that's true statement. Absolutely true statement.
All right, gentlemen. Thanks so much, everyone. We should stop the recording. So.